I'm excited today to have Chris Brown on the podcast. Chris is partner and CTO at Wow Remote Teams, a staffing and recruiting firm focused on sourcing amazing talent from Latin America for U.S. companies. Chris brings nearly 2 decades of technology experience to the space, helping to increase efficiency and reduce costs. Chris, I'm so glad you're here, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me, William. It's great to be here.
Welcome to Catalytic Leadership, the podcast designed to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. Here is your host, author, and leadership and executive coach, Dr. William Attaway.
Yeah, I'd love to start with you sharing some of your story with our listeners, Chris, particularly around your journey and your development as a leader. How did you get started?
How did I get started? That goes way back, of course. I've been an entrepreneur for forever, essentially. When I was a teenager, I was selling things on the internet and, building things. And I actually got really into entrepreneurship. My whole family's in entrepreneurs. They own businesses and run things and own a lot of real estate and do the whole, thing, like build our own world, essentially. I really got started like selling pieces out of video games. So I would play, I'd play online video games, MMOs, back, I'm getting old now. So back when I was a teenager, it was like EverQuest and then World of Warcraft. I'd play those and sell pieces out of those games and sell gold and sell all those things. And that funded some international travel that I wanted to do. I went to Australia when I was like 17 that I had paid for by selling stuff on video games.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So, it all started way back then of, how do you do this? Like, I had jobs. I always had a job. I always had to work. You have to do the normal thing, but there's a whole other side path in life of how do you achieve your goals and how do you get to where you're trying to go? And part of that for me has always been, like this idea of freedom, but more than just like freedom, but like, location independence, financial independence, the ability to live life on my terms, which is a bit of a cliche kind of thing to say, but it's really been a focus of how I've lived my life and how I've developed these businesses and systems and the operating system of life, right? The operating system of how do I do this? Like I said when we were chatting before, we're in Montana currently. We're from Phoenix. It's August 4th today, so Phoenix is very hot. It's probably 110 or something there right now. So I need to not be in Phoenix. So why would I be in Phoenix? It's 110 degrees. So part of this entire journey has been, how do I do that? How do I live that life? How do I do the things I want to do? For a long time, there was a lot of travel focus there. And I say that as if it's not still, right? I'm talking about, I'm in Montana today. Like I still travel a lot. It's a major part of life. But there was a lot of international travel. I went through all over Southeast Asia and Europe and, all through Central and South America. I lived in Colombia for 5 years, which is part of how we got into this conversation today. And all of those travels, generally, it's always been long-term stuff. I'm not like a vacation kind of guy. Like it's always been, I want to go somewhere. I want to stay there. I want to live there. I want to see what life is like in a different place and really get an understanding of what's the difference and what's great and what's beautiful and what's the food like. I'm a big foodie. It's always just how good's the food? Where's the best food? And the answer is Mexico. It's always Mexico. My wife likes to fight with me and say it's Peru, but it's Mexico.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, in that realm, in that kind of direction, you end up with a lot of like, how do you do this better, essentially? Like, how do you, coming back to leadership, like to build these things requires other people. I wish I could do it all myself. Maybe I don't wish I could do it all myself. Why would I want to do that? It requires other people. You need a team. You need other people that are on board with you, that are working towards the same goal, that are excited for the thing you're doing and working on it with you, not just for you, but with you. And to get there, you have to learn how to manage other people and not just manage like, did you get your work done? Are you hitting your KPIs? Are the expectations being met? But manage them. What makes them excited? What brings them to the table? Why are they here? Why are they going to stay here? Why are they going to work on this thing with me? Are they aligned? Are they in the same mindset? Do they want the same things? if so, this works out a lot better, right? If we're all kind of going the same place, then we all get to go there together. So there's all these pieces, and I don't know if I'm just off on a tangent at this point, but there's all these pieces that have to come together. And, my experience of doing this has been to learn to do that was never a thing I was taught. I went to university, I have degrees, I have this whole other technical side that was part of this journey of like, how do you do these things and where can I go and make a lot of money essentially. But these things weren't a part of that. Like, how do you really integrate a team? How do you be an effective leader? Not just, here's a textbook about leadership and you need to make sure people have the right, this, that, and the other, but more like, how do you actually figure out what someone needs? How do you understand them at a personal level in order to find that? And I'm not saying like I understand this 100%. This is a journey, right? This is part of the process. Like, I am in this today. I'm trying to figure this out. And figuring it out, I mean, I have 20 years of business experience, plus I'm 40 now, and I've been doing this since I was a teenager. I have a lot of experience and a lot of time in market trying to help other people achieve their goals while achieving my goal, right? So yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like I'm just ranting at this point, but it's somewhere in there. There's an answer in there.
Well, no, I love that. I love what you said about the distinction between the education that you got, the degrees, all the things that you've learned, and learning how to lead other people, because that is a distinction that I think is important. Leadership is something that is executed and learned as you are executing. You can read hundreds of books on leadership. I have, right? But you learn how to lead by doing it. And I think that's where there's been no wasted experience in your life. Everything that you have described there and so much more has contributed to make you into the leader and the person that you are now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's true about just about everything in life. That's the way education is very important, and it gives you a solid basis and foundation, and you can spread wide and have more ideas and a better understanding. This kind of multimodal sort of polymath sort of understanding of the world. But if you don't go and do it, like I think failure is one of the most useful processes that there is. And I think speaking about failure and talking about failures is I don't know. People are afraid of it. People are worried about it. People think it's like a negative mark, but it's not. It's how you learn. It's where the rubber meets the road, essentially. You got to put it into practice. And when you put it into practice, it's not going to work. And that's when you learn how it actually works.
Well, I think failure is part of the journey to success. I don't know anybody who has been successful at anything without experiencing failure at certain points. But the key there is not over-identifying with it and saying, well, then I'm a failure because I failed. No. Failure is an event. It's not a person.
Right. Yeah.
And
it's
I
not
think
your
that's
character.
important.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Unless you make it.
You.
Unless you decide it is.
If you choose.
Okay.
If you choose, okay. But you get to choose.
Yeah. Yeah, you get to choose, and you also get to choose how you react to it. As with everything, right? There's kind of the stoic idea of how do we manage ourselves, right? Like, you get to choose what your reaction to that event is. If you decide to lean in and take it personally, as if that whole conversation, it is a learning experience. It is a thing to aim for in the process of getting to success. In fact, I don't know. I don't know if we know what success is without failure. It's like
Well said.
You don't know that you have good luck unless you have bad luck. If all you have is good luck, you have no idea that you have good luck. It's the same with success. If you're immediately successful, you have no idea. I mean, within reason. If you're a billionaire first chance, then you probably know you're successful. But
if that's your measure of success,
right? Yeah. That depends.
And that's the other piece. You get to choose what your measure of success is. For some, maybe it is dollars in the bank. For some, it's the freedom that you described. The location freedom or the time freedom. I think we have to understand that there's not one definition of success that rules them all. That one size fits all. You get to decide what does success look like. What will success look like? Where am I aiming? Where am I? Where do I want to be? And how do I get from here to there? I think this is what we get to do as leaders. We get to not just chart that path for ourselves, but we get to help other people and encourage them and empower them and equip them.
Yeah. And also give them like some perspective that it's possible. sometimes.
Yes,
When you go, yeah,
100%.
you can do this, you can be this way, you can live like this. You just have to, A, you have to know it's possible, and B, you have to know how to go get it.
And do the work.
Do the work. Yeah, you always got to do the work.
That's right.
That's step zero. You got to do the work.
And yet shocking how many times people think they don't have to. They can
Yeah.
avoid that,
Yeah, but I mean, it's another failure step, right?
100%.
Yeah.
So I would love for you to share a little bit about WOW remote teams. A lot of the folks who are listening lead teams, many of whom members are remote, but some have not yet taken that step. And there's a struggle in this idea, like, well, man, what does it look like, and why should I consider, LATAM when I'm thinking about remote teams members? What makes that different from any other part of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, because our clients are U.S. companies, right? We're a U.S. company. I'm an American, obviously from my accent. Um, for us, it's a really good talent pool. They're very culturally aligned, and they're also very time zone aligned. So that makes a big difference. We get a lot of people calling us who have talent in other places in the world, and they're having problems with the time zone thing, where the person that they have is working at 2 o'clock in the morning. Maybe that's great. I like to say I'm very biased, right? I'm getting the calls of the people that are unhappy with that situation. So that
Right.
situation works. It works all day. There's a lot of very large companies and a lot of people doing, remote work from wherever, from the other side of the planet. But that time zone alignment is really impactful and really important. Everybody on my team is from Latin America, and it's everybody works the same shift. Everybody's on during the day. We all get up. We have our morning meetings at 8:06 a.m. and for it's got to be a weird time. It helps people get online. I don't know what it is about it, but if
That's
it's
great.
8, people don't show up. It's 8:06, everybody's there. It's a great thing.
Wow.
Yeah, it works.
Good tip. That's good.
Yeah. But, everybody's online at 8 a.m. Some people had started an hour earlier. Some people start an hour later. It just depends on their job and what the overlap looks like. And everybody's online throughout the rest of the day. Basically everybody on my team's full time. So you get complete overlap, right? I'm here, I'm working, I'm ready to go. My partner is here, she's working, she's ready to go. And all of our team is online at the same time. Anything happens, everything we need to know about. There's no disconnect. There's no strange oddities. There's no, this email came in and then it went out wrong. And then there's a 12-hour gap. And now we're replying to a client again. Like I don't like that. I don't like those gaps. That doesn't mean that everybody has to be, that way. You can work differently. But for me, that's important. And for me, it works really well. And for my clients, it seems to be important and works really well, right? We're online, we're working, we're top of mind right now. I don't want to think about this at 4 a.m. I don't want to wake up at 7 and have client issues from yesterday that didn't get replied to till 4 a.m. that are still a problem. So, that. The other thing is just talent pool. There's a huge talent pool in Latin America, and there's a really strong talent pool. They're very well educated. They're very well experienced. They have a lot of roots with U.S. and American companies, right? Like, all of these Latin American companies, a major basis of their economies is the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy is the driver of the economy in this hemisphere, essentially. On the planet, really, but in this hemisphere, we are the dominant factor. Everything that happens around us is connected to us. And Latin America, a lot of them come from, deep roots of culture that have been influenced by US methodology. Our business methodology is somewhat unique. It's why we're so dominant. It's why we're good at what we do, right? We dominate every market on this planet, essentially. Maybe not, industrial exports so much anymore, but we did for a time and then we moved on.
Yeah.
Which is to say that, the Latin American systems are built basically the same way. The education systems are built basically the same way. Everything is very correlated and just, there for you. It all works really well together. And then you have this other piece, which is language. And language, right? All of Latin America speaks Spanish, except for Brazil. They speak Portuguese. But English is really strong throughout. That doesn't mean everybody speaks English. Now, you can find a lot of people that don't. But English is very strong throughout. English is a highly regarded thing throughout them. And that also comes back to America is the dominant force. They know that America is the dominant economy. If you want to succeed, if you really want to grow, if you want to come up, you're going to go try to learn English. and it's going to be part of your curriculum, right? My wife and my partner is from Bogota, Colombia. I met her while I was living in Colombia, and she speaks perfect English, speaks great English, right? She learned English her entire life. She had it in school, she had it in media, she had it in everything.
Wow.
And then you add another layer to that, which is technology, right? We have the internet, we have this, like me and you, where are you right now? Where are you located?
I'm outside of Washington, D.C.
Okay, yeah, you're 2,000 miles away from me, essentially, right? And we can have an in-person, digital in-person, immediate face-to-face conversation. So that's true about every reaction in the world right now, right? All of these people in Latin America, they're consuming US content. Of course, we're the biggest content creator on the planet. They're consuming content in English. They're consuming all of our stuff all the time. There's radio, there's music, there's TV, there's movies. All of this is just being streamed and given, right? And then there's no longer a differentiation. You don't have to go to the movie theater and watch a movie, and you can watch the same episode of Friends 7,500 times until you know every word that they've said. And yeah, like they're learning, they're just vicariously just absorbing English because we're such a massive cultural powerhouse. So like they know our culture, their basis is partly our culture. They have their own cultures, right? They're all different. They all work their own way. This is not to say that America dominates everything, but it's to say that we're aligned. And that alignment really brings a lot of power to US businesses because you get to go to a talent pool that's much larger than you were previously experiencing. And you get to find people that are very well educated, very adept at what they do, probably very well experienced. There's huge corporations of every kind that you could imagine all throughout Latin America. There's every industry. There's every type of market, every type of economy, everything you can imagine. There's somewhere in Latin America that has that kind of economy, has that kind of industry, has that kind of production modality. And you can tap into those resources. And especially coming at it as an American company, you're going to offer them higher rates and a better compensation package than they're going to get offered in their home country. So now you have this dual win situation where you're coming at people that are very experienced, very talented, very adept, and you're coming with a compensation package that they couldn't get in their home country. Like, that's win-win because that compensation package is going to be less than you're going to pay Americans. Like it's almost always. There's exceptions at the top end, of course. You can get into, but yeah, you're saving money, right? You're going into, it's an arbitrage play at that point on the finance side of it. And yeah, you get amazing people, amazing talent, amazing alignment, better prices, and it's a huge win. It's a huge win in every direction, essentially. And I'm the guy with the company. Like, there's a bit of a sales pitch in there, but just like I used this service before I came into this company. My old company, I had an e-commerce company selling medical and dental supplies, and we had a CSR team. We replaced them with Latin American staff. We had our development team. We replaced them with Latin American staff, and it was fantastic. We saved money. The KPIs got better. Like we upscaled our operation for less money doing it through Latin America. Part of that was having a good resource. I was using my partner as the resource to start finding those people. She's very good. She's very adept. She was an executive in an education company in Colombia before moving to the US. So she's very well rooted and has very good connections and network, and of course, very smart. But using that network, bringing that in, using that talent pool, just completely changed the base operation of that company. By the time I left that company, the only people left in the US were the people that were needed to be there, like the forklift operator and the office manager.
Wow.
Everybody that could be remote was from Latin America. And again, that was also, again, going back to the way I've structured my life and my businesses, that one was also structured to be as remote as possible. Now, there was a warehouse, there was physical inventory, it was a large operation, but the majority of the positions were built in a way that nobody had to go to that office. They had the optionality. If you really wanted to go to Mesa, Arizona and go to a warehouse, have fun. There's a desk, you can use it. I don't know why you're going to, but have fun. But once we saw the Latin American option, it just took over, the hiring process of the organization, because it was just just better. I mean, my partner and her recruiting team were far better at finding good people than we were in our own company, because we didn't have a dedicated recruiting team. Why would we? We're in e-commerce with a warehouse. We need 15 people at any given time. So I don't want to hire a recruiter as well. So you're kind of doing it yourself, right? You have your operations officer kind of acting as recruiter, and that works well. They know what you need. They're probably good at finding stuff, but they're never as good as a dedicated recruiting team, right? They're not as good as somebody whose job it is to interview people and who enjoys interviewing people, you know?
It's
It
very
makes a
true.
difference. It makes a huge
It,
difference.
it really does.
Yeah.
You know, a couple of things you keyed into there that I want to follow up on. One was the cost thing. Most people think about, sourcing talent offshore as a cost being the primary reason you would do that. One of the
Mm-hmm.
things you talked about was how it's not just a matter of a benefit for the businesses in the US to think offshore talent. It's not just for a cost benefit for you, it's also for them. You're actually giving them an opportunity that at a wage and a benefit package that they could not achieve without that. I think that's important. One of the key themes that I talk about frequently when it comes to leadership is seeing the people that you lead not just as cogs in a machine, but as actual 3D human beings, right?
Yeah.
People that have hopes and dreams of their own. It sounds like, and feel free to correct me if I'm off, but it sounds like that is how you view this entire thing, as you're trying to find a winning situation for everybody involved, the employer and the employee, the team lead and the team member, so that everybody wins. Is that accurate?
Oh, that's 100% the underlying model. That's what underpins this business working, is that the people you hire have to be happy, essentially. They
Yeah.
have to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
They have to be well compensated. They have to be getting what they want out of life and out of your position in order to be a long-term stable asset to your company.
Good.
And yeah, the only way you get there is for them to be well compensated, be well maintained, be well cared for. And in order for that to happen, you have to pay a good salary, pay a good wage, have good benefits. You have to take care of them, make sure that they know what their time off is and are able to take it and aren't overpressured and aren't overworked. And yeah, I mean,
That's
I,
good.
that's part of it is client intake, really, because finding candidates, finding good people, making sure they're well compensated, it's very important. Again, it's an underpinning of our business. It's part of the point of the operation is bringing better opportunities to people in Latin America. That's kind of part of how this started. It also started as we can find it for Americans, and there's a business model. But clients, checking clients, intaking clients, seeing if a client is a good fit is part of that motion. And that is that question of like, what is your business's policy? What is your outlook on how this works? Are you treating this person as a disposable contractor? If so, I'm not the right guy for you. I don't really want your business. I mean, there's a lot of them, there's plenty of business out there for you. You can go find those people, but I don't want to be involved in that situation. So part of it is, assessing the clients that are coming in and making sure that, is your budget for this position reasonable? And I get a lot of client calls that it's not a reasonable budget for the position. And that's might just be my positioning in the market, right? We're a little bit more mid-level at this point, not at the, not entry or bottom level. So a little bit of that is positioning, but also a little bit of that is just that expectation that you're kind of alluding to, which is, we're coming at this to save money.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Well, you can try to hire somebody at $7 an hour from the Philippines or something, but at the end of the day, you're going to get what you pay for. You're going to save money by going
Well
to Latin
said.
America. You're going to save money by going to the Philippines. That doesn't mean it's going to be the cheapest thing you've ever seen, right? Like you get what you pay for.
That's well said. Talk about you for a minute in your journey as you described kind of where you've been, what you've been through, what you've led. What you have to do today for WOW, it requires more of you than it did 5 years ago. And 5 years from now, WOW is going to require even more. How do you stay on top of your game? How do you level up with the new leadership skills that your business, your clients, your teams are going to need you to have in the days ahead?
I mean, the answer is a little bit cliche, which is this like lifelong learning thing, which, I think everybody kind of leans into, and I think everybody does, but really it's the fundamental basis of how do you continue? How do you grow? Growing as a leader, growing as the business leader, growing as, the operational head is just another piece of everything else we have to grow at in life. Every day is new. Every day is a new challenge. Every day there's another little piece that you have to learn and figure out. And I think that's just this, it's this continued curiosity for me, which is just always looking for something interesting that helps along the way. It's not necessarily just blind shotgun approach to interesting things, which is basically like reels at this point, but more kind of focused interest is if you're for me, I don't know if this is always true, but for me, when a topic is top of mind, when something's kind of bothering me, when something's out there like, God, I just this is eating at me, it could be better, right? Something in this universe kind of brings the right information my way. And that's not just like I sit there and it comes at me, but I'm out there searching, I'm looking, I'm reading different things. And then, when you have something top of mind that's an issue, something that's not necessarily connected will click. And they'll be like, oh, but this topic's
That's
out
good.
there. I didn't realize that topic was out there. And then you go look at it and think about it. And then you read more on it. And then you realize, oh, that really does correlate, just not in the way I expected it to, right? There's this kind of tangential correlation to basically everything that you can go find new avenues in. And as you find those new avenues, those new methodologies, those new just interesting topics, they come back and they wrap around. It's like this thing, I forget the name of it. There's this thing where like if you learn a new word, that word's going to pop up in the world around you, right? Like you didn't realize you were hearing it all the time, and now you know what it means, and suddenly you see the word everywhere. There's that, but it kind of permeates everything around us. Like for me, anyways, maybe that's not true for but in my experience, when I see a new topic or when I see a new avenue or something, suddenly that kind of thing, it just starts clicking into place with everything else. And a lot of times, the way our mind works, or like my mind works, is that clicking will really help with that problem solving of the thing you're working on. It's not going to solve the problem, right? But it's going to give you that next little piece. And that next little piece is going to give you that next step. And that next step is going to lead to that action point. And that action point's either going to lead to failure and you're going to learn from it, or it's going to lead to success. And now you have the toolkit and then you can continue. And then it's just, it's the OODA loop kind of situation, right? You're continually looking, you're continually orienting, you're continually deciding, and then you're acting. And then you learn, because then you go back to the first step to see if that action worked. If it didn't work, which result was it, right? It's this continual ongoing cycle of, am I doing the right thing? Is this on target? There's this idea from the Charles Munger Almanac book, which is avoiding stupidity, right? Which is like, is this thing stupid? Is what is the bad consequence of this? Like, how can I avoid stupidity in these motions? And those things all kind of work together. They coalesce into a working operational reality around you.
I love that. You've mentioned at least one already. I'm curious, is there a book that you would recommend to the leaders who are listening that's made a really big difference in your journey?
Well, that one, of course.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Poor Charlie's Almanac is probably one of my favorite books. It's just, it's a little bit different, right? Like there's always these answers of, Atomic Habits is an amazing book. And
It is.
And Atomic Habits, he has a newsletter on Thursdays, the email
It does.
newsletter.
I love it.
It's the only newsletter that's allowed past my unsubscribe filter. It's the only one. No other newsletter gets past.
That's
That one
awesome.
I'll read every Thursday. It's fantastic. I love it. It's so valuable. But Poor Charlie's Almanac is just, it's a different thing. It's this idea of multimodal thinking, right? It's this lattice work of thought processing, and just and it comes back to that thing I was talking about a moment ago, which is like, ideas click when you find them in different places, but it has to be this network of ideas. It has to be this entire mesh of things that we understand, and this mental model that we have of the world based on that mesh of ideas and this information. So you bring all these things together from all these different places, and suddenly they connect in ways you didn't understand. And it's like this, his whole point is this basal understanding of kind of just multiple places. So like you have decent understanding of biology and physics and psychology and business, and as you go moving through the world, each of those things will kind of give you interaction or give you input. And it's especially leading teams, like you could lead all in on psychology, but then you have too much psychology, or you lead all in on just business, but then you just have business. You need a well-rounded approach to all these things in order to see the path ahead and get a better idea of what the problem actually is, and define the problem so that you can attack it.
Solid. Last question. And I ask this one to everybody.
Mhm.
If I had the ability to snap my fingers right now and solve one problem in your business, what would you want that problem to be?
Oh, one. I think communication is always this sort of transient problem that we have. It's not necessarily like, if you could solve communication in a way that's not just how do we communicate, because there's a billion ways to communicate, but are you doing it effectively? Are you doing it correctly? Is the recipient understanding what the sender, I'm not sure what the other word there is saying, right? Is it coming across in the way that it needs to come across? Because it goes sideways all the time, especially as you get further away from in-person spoken conversation. It gets harder and harder, right? So you go, in-person spoken conversation, you still have disagreements, you still have misunderstandings. Me and my wife I'll say something and she'll take it a different way, or she'll say something and I'll take it a different way. And then you have to iterate on this process to find what was the correct understanding there. What did you mean to say? How did you say it? And what was I meant to think from that, And that's in person. So you get to, video chats on a call here, or you get to just voice chat, and then you get down to email, and then you get down to text messages, and then you get down to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You get further and further away from a good, effective, empathetic approach to good communication, effective communication. And, I don't have an answer to that. We're always working on that. I'm always personally working on that. How do I get this across? How do I make sure that when I get this across, the other person gets what I'm trying to say? And how do I figure out how to, manage what I'm saying so that it comes across as clearly, as effectively, and as impactfully, but as empathetically as possible? And so
That's good.
yeah, I think somewhere in that world would be awesome. There's a million other problems to solve, but I think that would be, if you could snap your fingers and solve it.
That would be amazing, right? I wish I could. That would be amazing. I asked that question because I think it's so easy to look at somebody like you from the outside and say, "Oh man, Chris's journey's just up and to the right. Like he's never struggled with anything. He never really has any real problems, that like I have, And I think it's good for everyone listening to this episode to understand that no matter where you are on the entrepreneurial journey, no matter what level of success you've achieved, there are always things you would love to solve. There are always problems that are still staring at you that you're trying to wrestle to the ground. And I think that's very helpful and encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I would add that it's never always up and to the right. It's always rocky. That was just one example. There's endless examples.
Chris, this has been such a great conversation, and I'm so grateful for your transparency and your generosity in sharing so freely from your journey and what you've learned so far. I know our listeners are going to want to stay connected to you and continue to learn from you and more about what you're doing at WOW. What's the best way for them to do that?
Generally, the website, wowremoteteams.com. You can Google us or just ask ChatGPT for good Latin American staffing companies. It would generally pop up. The other way, of course, is LinkedIn, but my name is Chris Brown, so kind of good luck. But Chris Brown, WOW Teams, something like that, you'll find me. And yeah, those are really the best routes.
We will have those links in the show notes, including to your actual LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, please do.
Chris, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, William. It's been a pleasure.